So pretty much, I'm taking a spin on the article per se. You sent me a BuzzFeed News article that broke down every character, and we can reference this if we'd like, from Quentin Tarantino films, every female character. Essentially, and I saw this clip a long time ago. This journalist in the crowd of an interview is like, "Hey, you have Margot Robbie, who is a great actress, and I concur. I, Tonya is a phenomenal film.
So good.
Oh, such a good film. And she stills it. She's a phenomenal actress. And so this journalist is saying, hey, you have Margot Robbie, who is a phenomenal actress, and she has like no lines in your movie. And essentially the implication is it's because she's sexist. And Quentin Tarantino did exactly what I think he should have done. He's like, I disagree, and I reject your hypothesis, which I think is the proper response. Instead of defending it, he's like, I disagree. I think you're wrong. And anytime a Quentin Tarantino film comes out, we know this. We're both movie buffs. There's always the same group who gets angry about women in his films, and particularly the way they're treated. I personally feel like he's kind of all over the board with, I'm not even just saying women, just with characters and the way they're treated and the way they're portrayed. Most of Quentin Tarantino's characters are not good people. That's kind of his shtick.
Right.
And most of his characters endure some pretty horrific stuff throughout their movies.
Right.
I feel like it's selective to notice it only when it applies to the women, when that's kind of his whole thing.
That article mentions something that at least is worth exploring. Violence on women carries baggage of its own. And I don't know for better or worse, but it's like, it seems like for certain audience, violence against women is magnified. Probably to women, I guess, more than anything. It's kind of that thing we were talking about the other day where like it's all fun and games until the joke's about you. And I agree with your assessment that Quentin Tarantino's characters, like, while I don't think Quentin Tarantino's characters need to be representative of the group that Quentin Tarantino's exploring with the character. Like, I don't think Margot Robbie is a stand-in for the voice of the female community. You know what I mean? And
exactly.
That's where I think these people miss the mark, is that these characters are tools to tell a story, not surrogates for the minority or the group that they happen to be a part of. And that's something I've had a big problem with film criticism in the past several years, is this whole focus on the implications, the social meanings and reasonings and everything behind it. Because, yeah, let's not beat around the bush. Beatrix Kiddo, she was sexually assaulted over and over and over again when she was in the coma. She was murdered and brutalized, or almost murdered and brutalized, on her wedding day. That's all extreme shit. Let's also not pretend like Marcellus Wallace wasn't raped by a fucking gimp in Pulp Fiction. Like,
exactly.
He's equal opportunity offender. And yeah, we could say, yes, Quentin Tarantino, he perpetuates stereotypes. He uses racist jargon in his movies. Can I defend it? That's not even what I'm here to do. I'm not here to defend what Quentin Tarantino does is right or wrong. I'm just here to defend that as an artist, he should be able to make those decisions, and then the audience gets to decide whether or not they are on board with it.
Well, here's my thing is, as someone, I will use for my own experience. I was telling you, I'm writing a book right now. There are characters of all races and all this in it. And my main character is of Japanese descent. He's not representative of the whole Japanese culture. He's literally, you plug any character in that role and it would be the same character, Mm-hmm. But I'm sure people could look at that and be whatever. I also have his best friend is a black man, and he's one of my friends that I grew up with, like in my head,
Uh-huh.
And the dialogue is written exactly the way my friend speaks. So there is the N-word half the time when he talks, because I'm picturing someone who I know. Even the way I describe him, he looks like this dude, because you draw from what you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if you attack everything from that perspective, you can pick and choose stuff of how it represented it, even if the artist who created it did not mean that to represent
Right.
them. You can apply meaning to something that they didn't apply meaning to.
And in a way, that's 100% fair for you to deduce it the way that you do. Everybody's viewing is just as valid when it comes to criticism, I believe. I think that if that's the way that you're watching movies and that's the lens that you choose to view things from, that's fair. But it does get back to the idea of like, is it amplified when it's women? Do you feel like because of subjugation or because of the patriarchy that people should be more sensitive of the way that they treat women?
So here's my thing that I think cracks me up so much is people say, we need more female leads or we need more this, which I actually concur, and then that female lead goes through drama because guess what? That's what lead characters do.
Yes.
And then they're like, whoa, you can't treat her that way. Do you want equality or do you want special treatment? Because if you want to be represented on the same level that men are in film and told stories from that lens, then your character is going to go through trials, and some of them are going to be really harsh depending on the creator. And Quentin Tarantino is a perfect example. The characters go through. Look at Django. When you look at Django himself and you look at his wife, those both endure some horrific things throughout that movie. Both of them do.
Yeah.
Because you need them. Now, if you flip that and it was a movie about her finding her husband, then guess what? Would both be going through horrific things because that's what the movie's about.
Yeah.
And if you're the type of person who is so woke that you view everything this way, I challenge you to write an interesting story where no one does anything offensive, where no character says anything that's offensive, and more importantly, let's do it. Your female lead character goes through no trials or no drama because you don't want her to be heard. You're not going to have a story. That's just not how storytelling works.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I feel like it really depends on how you frame the movie. A lot of times with the marketing and all of that stuff ahead of time is going to change the way that people perceive it. And like we've talked about before, the difference between Akira and Captain Marvel, or Alita and Captain Marvel. But Quentin Tarantino's never misguiding audiences as to what it is they're seeing. If you are familiar with this work, he is a very big fan of 1970s exploitation films, whether we're talking blaxploitation, whether we're talking rape revenge. Like, he really likes the sleazy exploitation movies from the 1970s, and his films reflect that. I am not as big a fan of the movies that he's influenced by as I am a fan of him, but I very much know where he's coming from because I'm somebody that went down and explored your Cannibal Holocaust, your freaking Switchblade Sisters, like all of those movies, So I don't want Quentin Tarantino to be beholden to this new era of political correctness. I think that he's always been a confrontational filmmaker who just didn't give a fuck, and that's one of the reasons why he's resonated with the audience that he's resonated with. And when you say the characterizations are all over the place, I'm trying to think of, like, there are black characters who perpetuate very negative stereotypes. In the same movie, that Jackie Brown is easily the most altruistic and sympathetic character, well-developed character. Like you look at Samuel L. Jackson versus Pam Grier in Jackie Brown, and it's like, which of these people is supposed to be representative of their entire group? Neither of them, because they're characters within a story.
Well, I feel like sometimes, and here's my gut, I don't know Tarantino, just from his body of work, I'm assuming the guy's not sexist or racist in the least. Samuel Jackson's defended him numerous times, like, what the hell are you guys talking about, Uma Thurman, even with the whole thing of her driving, isn't her daughter or something in like one of the new films?
Yeah.
So you can't hate him that much, Sometimes, and I'm probably guilty of this, because I feel like you and me do not see the world through a identity lens. We don't see people's race, gender, sexuality, all that. We don't care. And so if someone like ourselves is writing a story, we're just going to create a character. It's not representative. It's just someone I'm picturing. This is how they look. This is how they act. And because of not viewing that world, essentially because you're so not racist, essentially,
Yeah.
that you can write something that other people view differently. And you're like, whoa, what are you talking about, dude? Like, I didn't think about it that way because I don't really give a shit about this stuff. Or sex. I don't really care. Like, I don't feel like someone's gender is necessarily the defining thing about them. Like,
Right.
a perfect Alita. I don't think of Alita as a strong woman film. It's just a pretty cool sci-fi movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alien, another one. It's when I think of Ripley, I'm not like, oh, she's a strong, empowered woman and she represents all women. No, she's just a cool chick in a movie.
It's also like, is Woody Allen racist because he writes what he knows? Like, if Woody Allen had to force a black character into every one of his movies, would he be able to draw upon, like, what experience would he have to be able to flesh out any characters in a way that was convincing or meaningful if it doesn't speak to his life experience, And
100%.
That's something that I also always go back to, is like, as a screenwriter, if you are, let's just say, a white, Caucasian, female writer, you're probably going to be able to flesh out your female white characters better than you would like a fucking Hawaiian guy character if you've never met anybody from Hawaii. The only reason I say that is because it feels like now you have to take your script and give it to some third party and say, hey, is there enough inclusion in this story? Have I ticked all my boxes? Have I made sure the representation is in a positive light of each of these characters? Because we've all got our own blind spots. And that's when I feel like art starts to get diluted, is when we have to start taking all of this secondary crap into consideration.
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head. You write what you know. What I'm writing right now, it's predominantly male because it's based around like gangs and stuff. It's very much drawing. It's a sci-fi book, but it's very much drawing from what I knew, drawing from characters in my life. And there's the other side of that. So here's the thing that always bothers me is people go, hey, we want more inclusion. We want more races. Okay. Then a white man writes more different races or writes a different gender or a different orientation. They're like, well, you don't understand that person enough to write them.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, so which is it? Do you want me to include them? Then you don't understand them. So you're like, okay, fine. I'll just write about what I know, which is I'm a white dude. I guess I'll make my meal with all white dudes. Well, then you're not including people. And there's a cycle of, no matter if you want to be offended, you can find anything offensive. I can put on any movie. If we should do it sometime. If we could figure out a way to live stream, watch a movie together, and just to rip it apart of how offensive it is. We'll pick like the most children-friendly, non-offensive film we can find. Guarantee you can find stuff if you're looking through that lens.
I think that's a great idea. I actually really like that. So, all right, let's specifically dig into it, kind of like that list did. Let's look at The Bride. I think she's like a pretty good place to start as far as, is she a feminist character, or is she I don't know, what's the opposite of is she a misogynist character? Well, how do you define what makes a strong female character? I guess we'll start there. I define a strong female character as a strong character that happens to be female.
I would agree. And I define a strong character as someone who overcomes adversity,
regardless of what that adversity is.
Yes.
Do you think that subjecting a female character to brutalization for her to become that fully formed woman, is that a cheap way to connect? Is that a cheap way to elicit empathy from an audience?
Yes, just as much when you watch someone get beaten or wrongfully accused or whatever, or their whole family die when they're male. These are all cheap tricks. That's what movies are.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. That's kind of the thing. If that's what the movie is designed to be, like Kill Bill is a revenge saga. You know, it's like this odyssey for vengeance. It would it have been as strong of a character if it were the groom instead of the bride? Well, that would open up the whole other side of the conversation of fridging the female character, where you just have a female character so that she can be murdered, so that the male protagonist can have his vengeance, and it's all been built. So everything is problematic. There's no way to sidestep that movies in this genre, they're exploitation movies.
So when you think about, okay, John Wick, it's about his wife dying and his dog dying, you know, and then he goes on a revenge plot. Then you think about Kill Bill. It's about her going on a revenge film. Both of these can be controversial. Both of them can be. Like you said, it can just, she's either set dressing and she's not a true defined character, and therefore she's only used as motivation, or you do exactly what they want and be like, why isn't she the main character? Why isn't she the one going on the revenge? And then she's being attacked and assaulted and we can't have violence against women. You got to choose one. You have to choose. You know, which of these are you okay with? Here, my thing is, I'm okay with what the story that the person wants to tell. If it's horribly offensive, then whatever, you know? I just won't watch it.
Yeah.
They still have every right to make it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just interesting because it is so, like, obviously there's nothing that any filmmaker could do that's going to, you know, please everybody, please the whole masses. And you hadn't seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood yet?
No, I was trying to go last weekend, or maybe today I'll try to go.
So I don't want to give anything away, but I felt like Margot Robbie is she's more of a symbol. It's more about what she represents than her as a character. That said, every time she's on screen, she's just like this bright fucking light. Like, you can't take your eyes off of her. She's completely transfixing, obviously because she's gorgeous, but then also just the way that Tarantino shoots her, like just the energy that exudes from her. And I think that she does what was asked of her as far as what the role demands. I think she freaking nailed it. She was able to elevate a line, a role that really doesn't have a lot of lines, because she was more of an idea. And I think that that came across really well, where if you look at a movie like Inglourious Bastards, I can't think of what her name is right now, but that actress, such a fucking fantastic character.
Yes, great character. What is her name?
And while it's still a revenge story, it's done in a much different way than your Kill Bill, where it's not like she's not this, you know, just total martial arts badass. She's not exceptional, skilled as a fighter, or any of those things that are like tropes of martial arts movies and things like that. It's a different approach to a revenge story, and I feel like Jackie Brown is another different approach to a revenge story, all told from a female perspective, all done in a way that's different enough to where they're not all just filling the same archetypal characters.
My thing, I feel like the thing that why Quentin Tarantino gets himself into trouble sometimes is because, ironically, and this is kind of what I was saying, I feel like he goes out of his way to write strong women, you know?
Yeah.
Like, he has more female leads than a lot of
Yes.
directors who've done this shit forever have. You know? Like, I don't know. I'm assuming I would have to go down the list. But, like, off the top of my head, you know, someone is, I don't want to say, as a director, but I'm going to know. But a lot of directors, you know, who are well known, most of the characters are men. You know?
Yeah.
And they're all male leads. So Quentin Tarantino writes female leads, and what happens, instead of being praised for it, he gets attacked for it. It's lunacy to me.
And, you know, we can take this same kind of ideologue perspective across different genres and look at, you know, like the horror movies. They're very much centered around this meek girl with moral, like virtuous morals, gets victimized, watches all of her friends get murdered around her, finally gets empowered by being subjected to so much trauma, and then basically turns the tables on the killer. And it's that same idea of, like, should the girl have to endure trauma to come out the other side transformed? And I think that's very, like, that's a story arc. That idea, like, whatever the catalyst is, the events of the story has to change the character. That's an arc. And within the confines of the revenge genre, within the confines of the slasher movie genre, there's certain expectations, and that's kind of the journey that the characters take.
Can you, off the top of your head, and I can't, but can you, off the top of your head, think of any male lead movie where the character does not overcome adversity or trauma?
No, I mean, that's storytelling. Even if it's something as simple as the guy loses his job and now he's got to go out and learn how to, get in touch with his true self or whatever. Like,
or like the movies like where the guy walks in, he finds his wife's cheating on him and his whole life falls apart and he has to rediscover who he is. And, like, that's what storytelling is. You don't want to read a story about a guy or a woman going to the grocery store, then walking to their dog, then going to their job, and then doing nothing. And what they overcome? Nothing. They punched a time card.
Yeah, that's not a story. And, now to get controversial, my biggest criticism about Captain Marvel is just that. Her shit was too together. Like, she started off this really cool, snarky, badass character, just really in control, smart, knew how to handle every situation. The movie ends the same way. She didn't have a journey. She wasn't transformed. She starts off and ends the movie the exact same way, and that's just not compelling, because what happened is they had to make her a strong female character. So when you've got a character that starts strong and ends strong, there's really not a lot of payoff. They need to overcome something. And just her being a woman, I don't think was enough of adversity to have to overcome. I'm sorry, ladies. I'm sorry.
And then you look at something like Iron Man, the first Iron Man. That movie is about him being a bad person and then overcoming that, but also overcoming getting tortured and kidnapped.
Yeah.
And no guy looks at that and goes, "Oh man, that's so sexist. Why did he have to be hurt?" That's storytelling.
Yeah.
I just blows my mind. I'm like, here's my thing is, if you're the type of person who's so woke and it bothers you, go write a story. Do it.
Yep.
That's how you rectify that. Write your story.
But it's so much easier to critique other people's.